So some of the things we talked about with that Danny put me through as far as the rehab portion of it, you could see through the last one, I just call it the dog pose, but there's a scientific name for it that brilliant people came up with. You can see I was shaking. Part of that is not so much, for me at least, the muscle stability. It's just the forcing yourself to breathe properly while in that position. I mean, it takes effort. So after going through some of the rehab stuff, I magically had seen Duffin's article pop up, why chest up in the squat is wrong. And I watched it, and he's talking about breathing out. He had actually 2 shaker cups. There was water in the one, and he was pressing, like a cylinder, you're pressing down, and that water's forcing out against the walls of the cup. Well, that's what you want to do with your core. I actually had a talk with Jeff Guller this morning. Jeff's 75, he squats 350, love the man. But Jeff doesn't know how to breathe. And so I kind of explained to him my thoughts on it and had him go through some of the breathing patterns, and kind of clicked right away. He was talking about, he's like, I'm trying to fill my belt, I'm trying to do this. But in the grand scheme of things, it's more of you should be flexing to fill that belt. And what Dave taught me was everything I was doing was pushing into the belt. I was never filling my obliques, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but your obliques and your lats are what is going to stabilize everything in terms of a squat or a deadlift. So getting rid of the pelvic tilt and learning how to breathe, I got rid of most of my low back pumps. There were literally times in that year and a half where I was getting ready for a meet. I would hit 80% squats for triples or sets of 4, whatever. In between those sets, I had to lay down. I could not stand up. My back was on fire. It was painful. And my partners need a knee wrap, and I'm like, yeah, go wrap yourself. I'm done with this shit. And so they're thankful that I fixed all of this. But now I'm watching them squat, and I can see some of that anterior pelvic tilt, and they're having some of the same issues. So learning to breathe, and then after fixing the anterior pelvic tilt, I was so much more efficient with my movements. I see where they're breaking down now, where I didn't see that before. And again, that's probably something that's true for, I would say, 90% of the people that are going to watch this video.
And you were even saying to me, you were like, Danny, I can't stop seeing this pattern now. Yeah. It's everywhere. Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that once you notice it, you realize how quick our body is to access certain points for stability. But when you were talking about using your obliques, hearing you say that just now, it hit me a couple minutes ago. We were going through the 90-90 stuff, and it was like, talk about your ribs and your diaphragm. But where do your obliques attach? They attach right at your ribs down to your hip bone. So if we're going to try and correct that tilt.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. So I think it might be good for us to maybe get in the squat rack, maybe not even under a bar, but just kind of show what exactly an anterior pelvic tilt is, what that looks like in a squat, what it looked like specifically in my squat, why it was a problem, and kind of go through a quick what it should look like. So the reason we came to the squat rack, I'm not going to do it with a bar because I'm lazy and I'll get tired, but kind of want to explain what an anterior pelvic tilt is, and then how I used to unrack the bar, how I unrack it now, and what that translates to as far as my squat, or anybody's squat. So an anterior pelvic tilt, I don't know if you can see, maybe a little easier if I roll my shirt up a little bit, but everything's arched. So I have, if my hips were a bucket of water, water would be spilling out the front. That was one good explanation I heard for it. So what we want to do is get from there to here. So now I try to teach my clients this online. It's a hard thing to put into words. So one of the quick solutions is squeeze your glutes. Okay, great, now I squeeze my glutes, but my chest is still down. So I need to really flex my low abs to get all of that back in line.
The traps a little bit too.
Yeah, obviously. So we want to stay tight with the upper body. What we don't want to do, some of the breathing techniques, I don't want to just push my ribs down. Again, that collapses the chest. So between what Danny taught me and what I read from Chris Duffin and watched some of his videos, I contacted him, we talked a little bit. One of the easy ways to do it, again, so I'm arched in that anterior pelvic tilt. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to squeeze my glutes, roll everything underneath me. Now I'm a solid piece. What I want to do is breathe out, force everything out of force all the lungs out of or all the air out of my lungs. At that time, to do that, I have to flex my obliques. So for a long time, I was just filling my belt with air this way. What we want to do is, like we're talking about that cylinder, compressing everything, forcing everything down and out. Once we do that, let me backtrack. When I used to unrack the bar, everything was, so again, that anterior pelvic tilt. I would stand up with the bar. Now I got the bar over my toes and nothing, I can't transfer force properly. So what I would do was, I'd squat, I'd reach my hips back, I'm squatting, now I'm back into my right side. Now obviously this is a little exaggerated. You can see I'm stretching my hamstring. If something's gonna go, it's gonna happen in this leg. Or worst case, something might happen with this knee. Again, this was the weak point, so it was left adductor, left hamstring, left glute. Again, the solution to that, once I got the anterior pelvic tilt fixed, once I learned how to breathe properly, I could get my hips under the bar, set my diaphragm, brace properly, and squeeze the bar out of the rack. So I'm not going to good morning it out of the rack, hips under me, squeeze the bar out of the rack. And once I squat, I'm going to reach back, but I'm also going to open my groin up, and now I can transfer force properly back into the bar. And I'm not here, I'm not soft. I don't know, some of the cues.
You should be able to feel like you can almost keep your hips underneath you a little bit. So that exercise we were at your hands and knees earlier, do you think being able to feel your low abs there translated to be able to feel it a little bit better here?
Yeah, certainly. So
you've got to build from somewhere.
Right.
It's hard to just come into under a bar, especially for a maximal or near, let's say 87% plus attempt. It's hard to get all that to hold. So from the side, come this way, turn the side a little bit so that.
Well, he's got it here.
All right. So in this position, you can see Casey's ribs are totally, they're popped up.
So yeah, that's a good point. My relaxed position with an anterior pelvic tilt, my ribs flare. What happens if I hit that point in a squat? There's no way I can be as tight as possible. So I go to push, my hips come up, the bar comes forward. I would bet better than 50% of people miss squats that way.
On the 90-90 breathing exercises, one of the big things, take a breath in, and as you breathe out, get your ribs down. Let them come down a little bit more. Rib mobility, I cannot overstate the importance of. So what that does is actually flatten this out a little bit. It's important to note too that you're not going to change your overall posture. Like if you have an anterior tilt the rest of the day, okay. You know, part of it is structural, but when you're under a bar, you've got to figure out how to get this.
And it's one of those, even one of those things that like I'll stand in the shower and I feel it. So I'm like, all right, that's one of those stupid things. It's a time to work on it. It's the same thing like when I talked to Dave, like, how do you get better at a box squat? Well, every fucking time you sit down, you do a box squat, or you sit on the toilet, when you sit on the couch, all that stuff. So, you know, that's part of being an obsessed lifter, but again, one of those ways to quickly practice some of the things you want to do.
But I think the more you do that too, the easier it becomes to find that pattern. You don't want to have to think that hard about finding those low abs when you're underneath the bar. You've got enough other things to be thinking about. Sure. The more natural that can be, the better, I would imagine.
And maybe one quick thing I see with a lot of people that are starting to learn this, they will get to neutral and they will do an okay job pulling the ribs down, but what they'll do is let their knees slide out. So they feel like everything's in a straight line, but it's kind of not. You're compensating a little bit, so that's maybe one thing to put in the back of your mind.
Anecdotally, one thing that we didn't talk about that we maybe could have, so when I said to engage your traps, you kind of went up here. When you do that, it's really tough to get these working to breathe here. So you almost want to think about, find your hip position. Okay, get your low trap going. So you're all up here, come down, squeeze less, relax, relax everything. Let this relax all the way. Okay.
Give up.
So think about the accelerator in a car. I want you to very gently push on that accelerator just to find right here. Your low traps are going to help to stabilize all of this in the shoulders, the rib cage, everything in your neck so that you can keep this engaged.
Is that better?
That's much better.
See, I can do it.
So if you find
that's
yourself...
one of those things that like, sitting here doing this, you learn something new. I mean, it's just trying to figure out how your body works.
And it's always building. Mm-hmm.